He, an arrogant tycoon, never took no for an answer. She, a humble cleaner, refused an abusive order. "No, Mr. Thorne, I won't do that." She taught him an ethical lesson. Victor, shocked, was disarmed by her integrity. The millionaire falls in love. Before we start the story, leave a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The sun hadn't risen yet when Maria Garcia walked through the gates of the Manhattan Financial Center in the heart of New York City's financial district. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble of the lobby as she wheeled her cleaning cart through the hallways, which in a few hours would be bustling with executives in expensive suits. At 28 years old, she knew every inch of those 40 floors, every smudge that insisted on appearing on the glass, every corner where dust accumulated. She came from the Bronx, waking up at 4 in the morning to catch 2 buses and get to work before 6. Her mother, Donna Elena, always said that honest work never shamed anyone, and Maria carried that lesson in her heart like a shield. She had grown up watching her mother sew late into the night to support the family after her father left, leaving only debts and empty promises. On the 35th floor, where the offices of Thorne Investments were located, Maria worked with even more care. She knew that millions in deals circulated there, that every detail mattered. Victor Thorne, the owner of it all, rarely appeared before 9. But when he did, his eyes scanned the environment like a hawk searching for imperfections. He was different from the other executives. Younger at 39, but he carried an aura of power that made everyone around him instinctively bow down. Maria watched him sometimes when she thought no one was looking. Victor never smiled genuinely, only flashed that calculated half-smile he used in meetings. His gestures were precise, his words measured. Everything about him breathed absolute control. One Tuesday morning, while cleaning the main conference room, Maria heard raised voices coming from Victor's office. Through the crack in the door, she saw the CEO arguing with an older man about mass layoffs. The man argued about families who would be left without support, but Victor cut him off coldly. "Business is business, Robert. Sentimentality doesn't pay dividends." Maria felt a pang in her chest. She knew many families who depended on those jobs, but it wasn't her business. She was just the cleaner. She went back to work, trying to push away the disturbing thoughts. Her routine was always the same. Finish cleaning by 2 in the afternoon, rush home, have lunch with her mother, help her younger brother Michael, 16, with his night school homework. And sometimes there was still time to sew some pieces that she sold to supplement her income. Donna Elena always insisted that she study, but the money barely covered the basics. "You have a special light, my daughter," her mother would say, stroking her dark hair. "One day someone will see it." Maria smiled, but deep down she knew that her life would always be like this. Wake up early, work hard, come home tired. Not that she complained. She had a roof over her head, food on the table, and a family that loved her. It was more than many had. The following Thursday, something changed. Victor arrived earlier than usual, clearly irritated. He was talking on the phone in a harsh tone about a merger that had gone wrong. Maria was organizing the documents on his desk when he hung up abruptly and looked directly at her. "You," he said, as if he were seeing her for the first time.
"How long have you worked here?"
3 years, Mr. Thorne," she replied, keeping her eyes down. "And you've always been efficient." It wasn't a question, but Maria nodded. Victor continued to stare at her for a moment that seemed eternal, as if he were evaluating something that went beyond the cleanliness of the offices. "Keep up the good work," he said finally, turning his attention back to the computer screen. In the following days, Maria noticed that Victor was watching her more. Not in a disrespectful way, but with a curiosity that made her uncomfortable. She wondered if she had done something wrong, if her presence bothered him. She began to work even more quietly, trying to be invisible. Life in the Bronx continued as before. Michael dreamed of going to engineering college, but they knew it would be almost impossible. Donna Elena worked harder and harder, her calloused hands telling the story of decades of struggle. Maria carried on her shoulders not only her own dormant dreams, but the hopes of the entire family. She was a simple woman with solid values rooted in her heart. She believed in justice, honesty, respect, characteristics that her mother had planted in her since she was little, watering them with daily examples of dignity, even in difficulty. "We may not have money, but we have character," Donna Elena always repeated, "and that no one can take away from us." Maria took those words to work every day, holding her head high, even when some employees treated her like furniture. She knew her worth, even if the world around her didn't recognize it. And then, on a morning that started like any other, everything would change forever. Udbrail. That Friday began with torrential rain beating against the windows of the Manhattan Financial Center. Maria arrived soaked, her shoes making a wet noise down the hallway. She went up to the 35th floor, carrying a different weight in her chest. She had discovered the night before that Michael would need knee surgery to continue playing soccer, his only real chance of getting a scholarship. The quote that the doctor had given was equivalent to 6 months of her salary. Donna Elena cried hidden in the kitchen, thinking that she didn't see, but Maria knew every sound of that small house. All night long, she stayed awake, calculating and recalculating, trying to find a solution that didn't exist. Victor was especially tense that morning. The company was facing an unexpected audit, and federal inspectors had arrived to examine the accounting books. Maria saw him pass through the hallways several times, talking quietly with lawyers in dark suits, his expression more closed than ever. Around 10 o'clock, while cleaning the conference room adjacent to the main office, she heard Victor arguing heatedly with his chief accountant, Mark Sanders. "I need you to make a small adjustment to the numbers for the Project Phoenix," Victor said in a low but firm tone. "Nothing illegal, just reallocate some expenses. The auditors can't see the true amount invested there." Mark hesitated. "Victor, this could create complications. If they find out, they won't find out. It's just a matter of presentation. Fudge the numbers, so it looks like we invested less equity and more borrowed capital. Simple as that." Maria felt her stomach churn. She didn't fully understand accounting, but she knew when something was wrong. She continued cleaning, trying not to show that she had heard. 2 hours later, Victor left for an urgent meeting, leaving documents scattered on the table. Mark had also left, probably to carry out the orders he had received. Maria entered the office to do her routine cleaning. That's when she saw the papers. Project Phoenix was a low-income housing complex that would provide housing for low-income families. From the scattered documents, she was able to understand that Victor had diverted funds earmarked for the construction of a school and a health clinic in the housing complex, reallocating the money to his own investments. The families who would move there would be without these essential services. Her heart raced. She knew Project Phoenix. Several families from the Bronx had signed up on the waiting list, including her neighbor Donna Lourdes, who was raising 3 grandchildren alone. Those people placed their hopes not only on their own home, but on the promise of a nearby school for the children and accessible medical care. Maria looked around the luxurious office with its panoramic view of New York City, the imported furniture, the safe built into the wall. All that opulence built at the expense of those who needed it most. When Victor returned, around 3 in the afternoon, Maria was still in the office, organizing some books on the shelf. He seemed more relaxed, probably satisfied with the steps taken regarding the audit. "Still here?" he asked, loosening his tie. Maria took a deep breath, feeling her mother's words echo in her mind. "We may not have money, but we have character." She turned slowly to face him. "Mr. Thorne, can I talk to you?" Victor raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. In 3 years, she had never initiated a conversation. "Sure," he said, sitting down behind the desk. "What is it?" Maria walked until she was facing him, her eyes meeting his directly for the first time. "I saw the Project Phoenix documents." Victor's face hardened instantly. "You shouldn't be reading confidential documents." "I wasn't reading. They were scattered, and I recognized the name of the project. My neighbor is on the waiting list." Maria's voice trembled slightly, but she continued firmly. "Mr. Thorne, that school and that health clinic are essential for those families." Victor stood up abruptly. "You don't understand business. These decisions are complex, and I understand people. Maria interrupted, surprising them both with her courage. I understand mothers who wake up in the middle of the night, worried about how they will take their sick child to the doctor. I understand children who have to walk miles to get to school. You're forgetting your position here, Victor said, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. Maria felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she didn't back down. She thought of Michael, the surgery he needed, the job she would certainly lose. She thought of Donna Elena, the daily sacrifices, the dignity they had always maintained even in difficulty. My position is that of someone who cleans up the mess, she said, her words loaded with a double meaning that made Victor blink in surprise. But there's a mess I can't clean up, Mr. Thorne, the mess of conscience. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor stared at her as if he were seeing a ghost. Never in his entire life had someone spoken to him that way. Not an employee, not a woman of his class, much less a cleaner. You're fired, he said, but his voice sounded less firm than he intended. Maria nodded slowly, removing her apron and placing it carefully on the table. That's what I expected, sir. But at least I'll sleep with a clear conscience. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door, looking over her shoulder. You can buy a lot of things, Mr. Thorne, but dignity isn't one of them. And those families deserve the dignity of having a school and a health clinic as promised. And she left, leaving Victor Thorne alone in his office for the first time in his life, completely speechless. Maria descended the 40 floors of the Manhattan Financial Center with trembling legs, not from fear of the uncertain future, but from the adrenaline of having done the right thing for the first time in her life in such a forceful way. Each step on the cold marble echoed like a declaration of independence that she never imagined being able to make. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy when she got home. Donna Elena was in the kitchen, preparing the usual simple lunch, rice, beans, and fried egg. Michael was on the couch with his legs stretched out, flipping through a math book borrowed from the library. You're home early today, Hija, her mother said without looking up from the pan. Maria sat down at the kitchen table, still processing what had happened. How to explain that she had confronted one of the most powerful men in New York City. How to tell them that she was unemployed, just when they needed money the most. Mom, I need to talk to you. Donna Eleanor noticed something different in her daughter's tone and turned around, drying her hands on her apron. Michael also approached, limping slightly. Maria told them everything. Project Phoenix, the documents, the conversation with Victor Thorne. When she finished, silence weighed heavily on the small room. You did the right thing, Donna Eleanor said finally, her eyes shining with pride. Your father always said that we grow when we choose to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Michael shook his head, worried. Bia, what now? How are we going to pay for the surgery? We'll figure something out, she replied, more to herself than to him. We always have. That night, Maria barely slept. For the first time in 3 years, she wouldn't have to wake up at 4 in the morning, but that didn't bring relief. She lay staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about the families of Project Phoenix, about Donna Lourdes and her 3 grandchildren. On Monday, she decided to act. She put on her best clothes, a white blouse and a blue skirt that she had sewn for job interviews 3 years ago, and left home for downtown. Her first stop was the public advocate's office. The line was huge, full of people with stories similar to hers. When she was finally seen, she explained the situation to a young lawyer named Ms. Parker. Look, it's complicated, the advocate said, flipping through some papers. You don't have documents that prove the embezzlement, just what you saw. And confronting a company the size of Thorne Investments. It's David versus Goliath. What if other people confirm? If we can get more information. Ms. Parker studied her carefully. Are you serious about this? It could be a long, grueling process. And you just lost your job. That's why, Maria replied. If I don't do anything now, those families will be harmed, and I'll carry that forever. The lawyer smiled for the first time since the beginning of the conversation. All right, I'll open an investigative process. But we need more evidence and mainly people willing to testify. Maria's second stop was at the office of Councilman Anthony Rizzo, known for defending housing causes. She waited 2 hours to be seen, observing the frantic movement of aides and petitioners. When she finally entered the room, she found a middle-aged man with graying hair and a tired but attentive look. "Project Phoenix," he said as soon as Maria finished telling her story. "We've already received some complaints. Families saying that the promises aren't being kept. So you believe me? Young lady, I worked 15 years in construction before entering politics. I know how these things work." He leaned back in his chair. "The problem is that Victor Thorne has expensive lawyers and political connections. It won't be easy, but you'll try." Anthony smiled. "I'm already trying. And now, with your testimony, we have more ammunition." In the following days, Maria divided her time between looking for a job and gathering information about Project Phoenix. She visited the construction site, talked to workers, spoke with families on the waiting list. That's how she met Walter, a retired foreman who had participated in the construction of the housing complex. "Girl, that thing is being done halfway," he told her, sitting on the porch of his simple home. "The space destined for the school has become a parking lot. What was supposed to be the health clinic is being transformed into a commercial area. Would you be willing to talk to a lawyer about this?" Walter hesitated. "Look, I still have a family to support." "I understand," Maria said. "But how many families will be harmed if we don't do anything?" Meanwhile, she was desperately looking for work. She knocked on the door of dozens of companies, but without references from Thorne Investments, and with the certainty that Victor wouldn't give good recommendations, opportunities were scarce. It was in one of these searches that she ran into Mark Sanders, the company's chief accountant, in a bakery near the business center. He recognized her immediately and looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "Mark," she called, approaching. "Maria, look, I'm very sorry for what happened, but you know what Victor is doing is wrong," she interrupted. Mark looked around nervously. "I can't talk about it. I have a family, kids in private school, and the families of Project Phoenix, and the children who will be without a school. Listen," he said, lowering his voice, "I don't agree with everything that happens there, but I also can't afford to be a hero. I have bills to pay." Maria felt a pang of disillusionment, but she didn't give up. "If you ever change your mind, the Public Advocate's Office needs people like you." A week after her dismissal, Maria was organizing the documents she had managed to gather when she received an unexpected call. "Hello? Is this Maria Garcia?" asked an unknown female voice. "Yes, it is. My name is Sarah Miller. I'm a journalist from the City Gazette. I heard about your story through Councilman Anthony Rizzo's office. I would like to talk to you about Project Phoenix." Maria's heart raced. "Talk how?" "A report. What do you think about publicly exposing what's happening?" Maria looked out the window of the room, seeing the simple houses of the neighborhood, thinking about all the families she knew struggling for a better life. "I accept," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. "When can we meet?" "Hurt." The report was published on a Thursday, occupying 2 full pages of the City Gazette. The headline in bold letters read, "Executive diverts funds earmarked for school and health clinic in low-income housing project." Maria's photo appeared next to an aerial image of the Project Phoenix complex, where you could clearly see the empty space where the school should have been built. Sarah had done a thorough job. She obtained documents, heard Walter and other witnesses, and presented the inconsistencies of the project in a clear and impactful way. Maria's testimony occupied a good part of the story, portraying her as a courageous woman who risked everything to defend those most in need. The next morning, Maria woke up with the phone ringing incessantly. Donna Elena was in the kitchen with the newspaper open on the table, her eyes shining with pride. "My famous daughter," she said, hugging Maria. "The whole neighborhood is talking about it." But the joy was short-lived. The first call was from Ms. Parker from the Public Advocate's Office, and the tone was not at all encouraging. "Maria, we need to talk urgently. Can you come here now?" At the Advocate's Office, Patricia couldn't hide her concern. Thorn Investments has filed a defamation lawsuit against you and the newspaper. They're asking for $5 million in moral damages. Maria felt the ground collapse under her feet. $5 million. And that's not all. They got an injunction prohibiting any new publication about the case until it's judged. The newspaper has already been notified, but the report is true. I know, but now we have to prove that in court. And they have the resources to drag this process out for years. Patricia sighed heavily. Maria, you need to be prepared. They're going to try to destroy you financially, so you give up. Back home, Maria found more unpleasant surprises. Donna Lourdes, her neighbor who was on the Project Phoenix waiting list, was at the door, but her expression was not one of gratitude. Maria, you shouldn't have done that, she said, avoiding the young woman's gaze. Donna Lourdes, I don't understand. My daughter called this morning. They said that anyone involved in this whole mess will be cut from the project list. I can't lose this chance. It's the only one I have to give my grandchildren a decent home. Maria felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Acide, they're using you as blackmail. Maybe, but I can't risk it. Sorry, but I can't support you in this anymore. Donna Lourdes walked away quickly, leaving Maria alone on the sidewalk. The situation worsened over the following days. Walter called saying that he had been approached by lawyers from Thorn and that he could no longer collaborate with the process. Other witnesses also backed down, one after another, until only she and her testimony remained. A week after the publication of the report, Maria was at the supermarket doing basic shopping when she was approached by a man in a suit. Maria Garcia, and he asked, handing her an envelope. You've been served. Inside the envelope was the official notification of the lawsuit. $5 million in moral damages plus legal costs. The amount was so absurd that it was almost surreal. That night, sitting at the kitchen table with Donna Eleanor and Michael, Maria finally broke down. I destroyed everything, she said, the tears finally coming. I lost my job. Now I'm going to be sued for $5 million, and on top of that I hurt the families I wanted to help. Michael held her hand. Bea, you did what you thought was right, but it went wrong. Everything went wrong. And now? How are we going to pay for your surgery? How are we going to pay the bills? And if they really get that money, we're going to lose the house. Donna Elena, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Daughter, do you think you should have kept quiet? I don't know anymore. I know. You did what your heart told you to do. And even if it went wrong, you can look in the mirror and respect yourself. But her mother's words, although comforting, didn't solve the practical problems. The following Monday, Maria woke up determined to find a job, any job. She needed money urgently, and maybe over time, she could gather resources to pay for a private lawyer. That's when she discovered that her fight had become much bigger than she imagined. In all the companies where she applied, she received the same answer. Unfortunately, we have no vacancies at the moment. Some didn't even bother to disguise it, saying openly that they didn't want trouble. At the 5th company she visited that day, the human resources manager was more direct. Look, you seem like a good person, but your story is circulating in the business community. No one wants to hire someone who can sue the company or talk to the press. But I need to work. I understand, but you better look for another field. Maybe after this story cools down. Maria left the company feeling completely defeated. She had burned all the bridges, and now she couldn't even support her family. That night, lying in her bed, looking at the cracked ceiling of the room she shared with her mother, Maria wondered if it had been worth it. Victor Thorn remained rich and powerful. Project Phoenix continued the way he wanted. The families continued to be deceived, and she had lost everything. Worse still, now she was sure that he had orchestrated all this deliberately. The speed with which he got the injunction, the way the witnesses backed down, the business boycott. Victor wasn't just defending himself, he was counterattacking with all his strength. Maybe he was right from the beginning, she thought. Maybe I really don't understand business. Maybe I'm just a cleaner who got involved where she shouldn't have. For the first time since confronting Victor Thorn, Maria seriously considered giving up everything. 2 weeks after the start of the business boycott, Maria was in line at the bank, trying to negotiate the delay in the house mortgage, when an elegant woman approached her. "You're the Maria from the report, aren't you?" asked the stranger. Maria shrank instinctively. In recent days, being recognized on the street had become a source of embarrassment. Some people greeted her, but others looked at her with disapproval, as if she were a troublemaker. "I am," she replied softly. "My name is Eleanor Vance," said the woman, extending her hand. "I'm a lawyer, and I would very much like to talk to you." Eleanor was about 50 years old, grey hair tied in an elegant bun, and wore a suit that Maria estimated cost more than her 3-month salary. But there was something in her eyes that conveyed sincerity. "I don't have money to pay a lawyer," Maria said, embarrassed. "I'm not offering my services. I'm offering my help," Eleanor smiled. "How about we have coffee? I have a proposal that may interest you." Half an hour later, sitting in a coffee shop near the bank, Eleanor told her story. She was a specialist in corporate law and had worked for 15 years in large firms, defending exactly the type of company that was now pursuing Maria. "I got tired of seeing small fish being eaten by sharks," she explained. 3 years ago, I opened my own office and started defending causes like yours. But why were you interested in my case?" Eleanor hesitated for a moment, stirring her spoon in her coffee. "Because I've known Victor Thorne for a long time. I worked in the firm that advised his family before he took over the company." His family. Victor inherited Thorne Investments from his father, Edward Thorne. A complicated man. Eleanor chose her words carefully. What Victor is doing in Project Phoenix is nothing new. It's exactly the same kind of thing that Edward used to do. Maria felt a chill down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Thorne Investments has a history of low-income housing projects where the social promises are never fulfilled. Edward was a master at this. He won the bids promising schools, health clinics, leisure areas, but always found a way to divert the resources. And no one ever denounced him." Eleanor smiled bitterly. "Many tried. All were silenced in the same way they are trying to silence you. Edward had a method. He sued for defamation, bought silences, destroyed reputations. Victor learned well, so there's no way to beat him." "I didn't say that." Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Edward made a fatal mistake years ago. A mistake that may be the key to bringing down this whole structure." Maria felt her heart race. "What kind of mistake?" "In 1998, Edward diverted funds from a housing project to finance a shell company abroad. The money never returned to the US, and he declared the company as a loss to avoid paying taxes. But I have documents that prove that the company was thriving and that the money was used to buy personal properties." "Is that tax evasion?" "A tax evasion on a millionaire scale. The problem is that Edward died 5 years ago, and the documents I have aren't enough for a formal accusation. But if we can prove that Victor knew and continued using the same scheme," Maria began to understand. "Project Phoenix would be proof that he continued with his father's methods." "Exactly. And with your testimony, we have the piece that Talika was missing." Eleanor paused. "But I need to be honest with you, Maria. This is going to be a war. Victor won't accept being exposed quietly." "I'm already in a war," Maria replied. "The difference is that now I'm not alone." Eleanor smiled. "No, you're not. And there's one more thing you need to know." "What?" "Mark Sanders, the chief accountant at Thorne, contacted me yesterday." Maria's eyes widened. "Mark? He has a guilty conscience. He said he admires your courage and can no longer sleep peacefully knowing what's happening." Eleanor pulled a folder out of her bag. "He brought me copies of internal company documents, not just from Project Phoenix, but from 3 other housing projects from the last 2 years. Can he testify?" He's still hesitant. He's afraid of the consequences. But the documents he brought are already very strong evidence. Maria quickly leafed through the papers. Even without understanding all the accounting details, she could see the pattern. In all the projects, resources destined for social infrastructure had been diverted. "Eleanor, does this mean that..." "It means that hundreds of families have been harmed over the years, And that Victor isn't just an ambitious businessman. He's a criminal who is continuing his father's crimes. That night, Maria arrived home with renewed energy. She told everything to Donna Eleanor and Michael, who listened attentively to every word. "So you're going to keep fighting?" Michael asked. "I will. But now it's different. Now I know that this is much bigger than Project Phoenix. How many families have been deceived over the years? How many children were left without a school? How many sick people without a health clinic?" Donna Elena held her daughter's hands. "And are you sure you can trust this lawyer?" "She could have made a lot of money staying on their side, Mom, but she chose to come here. Besides, she has something that Victor didn't expect, his father's documents. And Mark, do you think he'll have the courage to speak?" Maria thought for a moment. "I think so. When I met him at the bakery, I saw in his eyes that he wasn't okay with what he was doing. He just needed someone to take the first step." 3 days later, Eleanor called with surprising news. Mark has decided to collaborate. Not only that, he said he has access to Victor's personal safe, where documents that Edward himself left are kept. Contracts, receipts, everything we need to prove the continuity of the scheme. How will he get that? Victor is traveling to London next week. It will be our only chance. Maria felt a mixture of hope and terror. They were about to cross a line from which there would be no return. But for the first time since she had confronted Victor in that office, she felt that she had a real chance of winning. The operation to get the documents from Victor's safe was scheduled for a Tuesday. Mark had confirmed that the CEO would be in London until Thursday, enough time to photograph all the necessary papers. Eleanor had instructed exactly which documents to look for, and everything seemed perfectly planned. On Monday night, the eve of the operation, Maria was in the kitchen helping Donna Elena prepare dinner when they heard violent knocks on the door. It was almost 9 o'clock, and the family rarely received visitors after 8. Michael went to answer and came back pale. "Bea, there are 2 men. They say they're from the police." Maria felt her blood run cold. She accompanied Michael to the door, where 2 men in civilian clothes showed their IDs. "Maria Garcia?" Indy asked the taller one, a man of about 40 with a scar on his chin. "Yes, it's me, Detective Miller from the 15th Precinct. We need you to come with us to provide clarification about a complaint." "What kind of complaint?" "Attempted extortion and trespassing," said the other officer, younger. "The victim is Victor Thorne." Donna Elena approached, her face distraught. "My daughter didn't do any of that." "Mom, stay calm," Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the panic she felt. "What is the accusation exactly?" Detective Miller consulted a paper. "According to the complaint, you allegedly approached Mr. Thorne last week, demanding money in exchange for not disclosing false information about his company. When he refused, you allegedly threatened to break into the offices to steal documents." "That's a lie," Lucas exploded. "My sister hasn't even left the house last week looking for a job." "We'll clarify that at the precinct," said the detective, signaling for Maria to accompany them. "Can I at least call my lawyer?" "At the precinct, you will have the right to a phone." The trip to the precinct was one of the worst moments of Maria's life. Sitting in the back seat of the patrol car between the 2 officers, she tried to understand how Victor had found out about Mark and the planned operation. Or was it just a terrible coincidence? At the precinct, she was placed in a small, windowless room. When she finally managed to call Eleanor, it was almost 11 o'clock at night. "Maria, where are you?" "Mark called me desperate, saying he gave up on everything." "I'm arrested," Maria whispered on the phone. "Victor denounced me for extortion." The silence on the other end of the line lasted an eternity. "I'm going there. Don't say anything without my presence." But Eleanor took 2 hours to arrive. When she finally entered the interrogation room, her face was tense. "The charges are serious, Maria. They have a recording." "What recording?" "Victor recorded a phone conversation where someone with a female voice similar to yours demands $100,000 not to disclose compromising documents." Maria felt the world collapse. "But I never called him. I don't even have his phone." "I know you didn't do that, but the recording exists. and the expert analysis will take weeks to prove that it was tampered with or that it's not your voice. The interrogation lasted until 4 in the morning. Detective Miller kept asking the same questions, trying to confuse Maria and make her contradict herself. Eleanor was by her side, advising her to answer only the essentials. When she was finally released to respond in freedom, Maria left the precinct at dawn, exhausted and defeated. Eleanor accompanied her home, where they found Donna Elena and Michael having not slept, waiting for news. "What now?" asked Michael, seeing his sister's state. "Now Victor has all the cards in his hand," replied Eleanor, unable to hide her discouragement. "With this criminal charge, any move we make will seem like revenge. And Mark is terrified. He said he's going to resign and leave New York City." That morning, Maria received 2 more devastating news. The first came by telephone. Councilman Anthony Rizzo, who had supported her cause, called to say that he could no longer be involved in the case. "Maria, I'm very sorry, but the pressure here in the city council is too great. They're saying you're an extortionist, that you invented this whole story to make money. I can't compromise my term." The second news arrived by mail. The building manager where they lived had sent an eviction notice. They were 3 months behind on rent and had 30 days to pay off the debt or leave the property. Sitting on the sofa in the living room with the eviction letter in her hands, Maria finally allowed herself to cry all the tears she had held back in recent weeks. Michael sat down next to her, putting his arm around his sister's shoulders. "Bea, we can stop all this. You can say you're sorry, that it was all a misunderstanding, and let Victor continue stealing from other families. What's the point of continuing if we're going to end up on the street?" Donna Elena, who had remained silent, approached the children. "Daughter, you've already done more than you could. No one will blame you if you give up now." Maria looked around the small but cozy room that had been her home for so many years. She thought of all the mornings she had woken up at 4 to work honestly. She thought of Victor in his luxurious office, manipulating lives like pieces of a game. "Maybe you're right," she said, her voice coming out weak. "Maybe I was naive in thinking that a cleaner could face a man like Victor Thorne." That night, Eleanor called with more bad news. Thorne Investments has filed a new lawsuit, now asking for $10 million in moral damages. And they got a court order freezing your bank accounts. Can they do that? With the criminal charge underway, yes. Maria, I need to be honest with you. I think we should consider a settlement. Victor is willing to drop all charges if you sign a retraction agreement and commit to never speaking about the matter again. Maria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of all that struggle on her shoulders. "And if I accept? You go back to your normal life. Look for another job, rebuild your routine. Forget that all this happened. And the families of Project Phoenix?" Helena sighed. "They continue to be deceived, but at least you and your family will be safe." After hanging up the phone, Maria lay in bed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. For the first time since she had confronted Victor in that office, she seriously considered accepting defeat. Maybe it was really time to stop. Maria woke up the next morning with a clarity that she hadn't felt in weeks. She had slept only 2 hours, but her mind was clearer than ever. She got up silently, so as not to wake Donna Elena, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. That's when she saw the letter that had arrived during the night, slipped under the door. Her name was written by hand, in a nervous handwriting that she recognized immediately. Mark Sanders. "Maria, I know you must hate me for giving up, but you need to know something. Yesterday, after I heard about your arrest, Victor called me into the office. He was different, more relaxed, almost euphoric. He said he had finally solved the cleaner problem, and that I could rest easy. But then he said something that chilled my blood. Now I can run Project Phoenix and the others without any interference. Those families won't even know what hit them." The way he spoke, Maria, it was as if people were just numbers on a spreadsheet. "I can't live with that anymore. If you still want to fight, I'll help you. I have the documents you need, Mark." Maria reread the letter 3 times, feeling something ignite inside her chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was something deeper. The unwavering certainty that some battles need to be fought, even when defeat seems certain. At 7 in the morning, she called Eleanor. I changed my mind. I'm not going to accept the settlement. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Maria, are you sure? After everything that happened yesterday? I'm sure. And Mark changed his mind too. He has the documents. How do you know? Maria told her about the letter. Eleanor listened in silence, and when Maria finished, sighed deeply. All right, but if we're going to do this, we have to do it right. No mistakes, no half measures. Victor won't give us a second chance. What do you have in mind? A press conference. We're going to expose everything at once. The documents from Edward Thorne, the current diversions, the other housing projects. We're going to make it so public that Victor won't be able to hide anymore. What about the criminal charge against me? It's a risk we'll have to take. But if we can prove that Victor orchestrated everything, the charge loses strength. 2 hours later, Maria was in Eleanor's office, where Mark was waiting for them. He seemed to have aged 10 years since the last time she had seen him. His hands trembled slightly as he arranged a pile of documents on the table. I got everything, he said, avoiding Maria's gaze. Contracts, internal emails, spreadsheets of fund reallocation. And I also found this. He placed a worn leather folder on the table. It belonged to Edward Thorne. Victor keeps it in his personal safe, I think, as a kind of trophy. They are documents from all the housing projects that his father diverted over the years. Eleanor opened the folder and her eyes widened. My God, there are dozens of projects, decades of diversions. Maria leafed through some documents. In each one, the same story was repeated. Funds destined for schools, health clinics, leisure areas being redirected to private investments of the Thorne family. How many families? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. By my calculations, said Mark, more than 5,000 families have been directly harmed over the past 20 years. And Victor knew everything. Not only did he know, he perfected the system. Eleanor began photographing the documents methodically. With this, we can not only defend Maria, but also prosecute Thorne Investments criminally. We are talking about tax evasion, racketeering, damage against public property. When are we going to release it? We asked Maria. Tomorrow. I'm going to call the press for 2 in the afternoon. Enough time to prepare everything, but not enough for Victor to react. Mark stood up, clearly anxious. I need to go. If Victor finds out I'm here... Mark, said Maria, making him stop. Why did you change your mind? He looked her in the eyes for the first time since he arrived. Because I have an 8-year-old son, and I want to be able to look at him knowing that I did the right thing at least once in my life. After Mark left, Eleanor and Maria spent the rest of the day organizing the strategy. Each document was catalogued, each piece of evidence was checked and rechecked. Eleanor contacted journalists she trusted, ensuring that the story would be covered by multiple outlets at the same time. One thing worries me, Eleanor said at the end of the afternoon. Victor is smart. He must be wondering how you knew the details you told in the first report. It's possible he already suspects Mark. Do you think he can do anything? Oh, Victor didn't get where he is by being passive. If he feels really threatened... Eleanor didn't finish the sentence, but Maria understood the implication. That night, Maria had difficulty sleeping. She knew she was about to cross an irreversible line. The next day, either Victor Thorne would be publicly exposed as the criminal he was, or she would be completely destroyed by him. Around 2 in the morning, she got up and went to the living room window. The street was silent, but she had the strange feeling of being watched. A dark car was parked on the corner with the windows closed. It could be paranoia, but something in her intuition warned her that Victor already knew what she was planning. She went back to the room and found Donna Elena awake. Can't sleep, daughter. Mom, tomorrow is going to be decisive. Either we win this fight, or you will have done everything you could do, Donna Elena completed, sitting on the bed. Maria, when your father left, I thought our family was over. But look what you have become. A woman who does not bow before injustice. What if it goes wrong? What if we lose the house if I'm really arrested? Donna Elena held her daughter's hands. Then we will face it together. But at least we'll go to sleep knowing that we fought. On the morning of the conference, Maria woke up with a call from Eleanor. Maria, we have a problem. Mark hasn't answered the phone since last night, and the security company of the building where he lives said he left yesterday with 2 suitcases. Maria's heart raced. You think Victor found out? Worse than that. I just got a call from a journalist friend. Someone leaked information about our press conference. Victor knows exactly what we're planning. Maria felt the ground shake beneath her feet, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from determination. Then he's scared. For the first time, Victor Thorne is scared. Maria, maybe we should postpone. No, she interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. Today, at 2 o'clock, with or without Mark, with or without the original documents. I'm going to tell everything I know, everything I've seen, everything I've lived. And if Victor wants to sue me for another 10 million, let him sue. Some truths need to be told, no matter the price. The press conference was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon in the auditorium of the Grand Central Hotel in downtown New York City. At 11 in the morning, Eleanor called again. Maria, Victor showed up. He's here at the hotel. What do you mean he showed up? Oh, he came personally to try to stop the conference. He's in the lobby with a team of lawyers, trying to convince the management to cancel our reservation. Maria felt her heart race, but also a strange sense of triumph. So he's really desperate, completely. And there's one more thing. Mark showed up too. He's here with me, said he couldn't run away at the decisive moment. When Maria arrived at the hotel, she found a crowd of journalists at the door. The news of the conference had spread, and now it wasn't just the vehicles invited by Eleanor. Television networks, internet portals, even international correspondents were present. In the lobby, she saw Victor for the first time since that transformative morning in his office. He looked different, less imposing, more human. His hair was disheveled, and there were deep, dark circles under his eyes. When he saw her, he froze for a moment. Maria Garcia, he said, approaching with determined steps. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Mr. Thorne. I have a proposal. $5 million for you to give up on all this. Enough money for you and your family to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. Maria looked him directly in the eyes, remembering the first time she had faced him. You really don't understand, do you? It's not about money. It never was. Then what is it about? About dignity. About doing the right thing. About not allowing people like you to trample entire families just to fatten your bank accounts. Victor recoiled, as if he had been slapped. You don't know what you're talking about. My father built an empire. Your father built an empire on lies and blood, Maria interrupted. And you continued exactly where he left off. At 2 o'clock sharp, the auditorium was packed. Maria went up on stage alongside Eleanor and Mark, feeling the weight of dozens of cameras on her. Victor was sitting in the front row, surrounded by his lawyers, his face tense. Eleanor began by presenting the evidence, documents, spreadsheets, contracts that proved decades of diversions in housing projects. Mark confirmed everything, explaining how the scheme worked internally. Then it was Maria's turn to speak. My name is Maria Garcia. I'm a cleaner, daughter of a cleaner, granddaughter of a cleaner. For 3 years, I cleaned the offices of Thorne Investments, believing that I was working for an honest company. Her voice echoed clearly through the silent auditorium. On the day I confronted Victor Thorne about the diversions in Project Phoenix, he told me that I didn't understand business. Maybe he was right. I don't understand how you can sleep peacefully, knowing that children will be left without a school because of you. I don't understand how you can look in the mirror, knowing that entire families have been deceived. She paused, looking for Victor in the audience. He was pale, his hands clenched. But I understand one thing about doing the right thing even when it's difficult. Even when it seems impossible. That's when the unexpected happened. Victor stood up slowly, ignored the urgent whispers of his lawyers, and walked to the stage. The entire auditorium held its breath. Can I speak? He asked, his voice coming out hoarse. Eleanor looked at Maria, who nodded. Victor took the microphone with trembling hands. My name is Victor Thorne, and Everything you've heard here today is true." The auditorium exploded in murmurs. Victor's lawyers stood up in panic, trying to get to him, but security guards stopped them. "Bistens, throughout my life," continued Victor, "I believed that power justified any means, that money could buy everything, including people's conscience. But this woman," he pointed to Maria, showed me that there is something that money can't buy: dignity." Tears began to run down Victor's face. "I apologize to the 5,000 families who have been harmed over the years by my father's crimes and my own crimes. And I announce here publicly that Thorn Investments will fully compensate all the damages caused." The auditorium was in complete silence, absorbing the magnitude of that confession. Maria Garcia taught me that some people can't be bought, can't be intimidated, can't be broken. She taught me that true strength doesn't come from power or money, but from the courage to do what is right. Victor stepped down from the stage and walked directly to Maria. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you for showing me who I really am." 6 months later, Maria was at the inauguration of the first school of Project Phoenix. Michael had won a full scholarship to engineering, and his knee surgery had been a success. Donna Eleanor was by her side, watching the children play in the new playground. Victor was serving house arrest, collaborating with the authorities to dismantle the entire structure of corruption that his father had created. Thorn Investments, under new management, had allocated $50 million to repair the damage caused over the years. Maria had refused any personal financial compensation, but accepted Eleanor's offer to work as an assistant in her office, helping other people in similar situations. "Do you regret anything?" asked Eleanor, meeting Maria at the end of the inauguration. Maria looked around, seeing the families celebrating, the children running, the dreams finally becoming reality. "How can I regret doing the right thing?" That night, Victor called her. It was the first time they had spoken since the press conference. "Maria, I wanted you to know that I started therapy. I'm trying to understand how I became the person I was." "That's good, Victor. It's never too late to change. Do you forgive me?" Maria looked out the window of her new house, a gift from Donna Lourdes and other beneficiary families who had chipped in to buy a simple but dignified house for the woman who had fought for them. "Victor, forgiveness is not something that is given or received. It's something that is built day after day with actions. Keep doing the right thing and you yourself will find peace." And so the cleaner who said no to a powerful businessman proved that human dignity is priceless, and that sometimes a single word can change not only one life, but the destiny of thousands of people. Dear listeners, we hope that the extraordinary journey of Maria Garcia has touched you deeply. Her courage reminds us that all of us, regardless of our social position, have the power to make a difference when we choose the path of dignity and justice. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special selection of equally inspiring stories that explore the strength of human character. You can find them by clicking here on the side. If Maria's story touched your hearts, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. This helps us continue to bring these transformative narratives to more people. Every day, we bring real stories of overcoming, love and hope that show the best of human nature. Don't miss our next content, and we look forward to seeing you in the comments, sharing your own experiences of courage and transformation. Then